Hey guys, so last week I did my CIM Race Prep series. I'm happy to be back with you all with the race completed to do a recap of the California International Marathon. So for those of you who are not familiar, this is a point-to-point course with a net downhill of about 300 feet. You start in Folsom, which is a city in Sacramento County, and then you run through several areas and finish at the Capitol building in Sacramento, California, right at sea level. Because of those couple of things, that was a huge reason why I wanted to run this race. I've just heard it was a fast course, and the fact that I'm coming from a mile above sea level in Colorado to sea level was definitely a lure for me. And I've just really heard great things about it overall. So it was kind of a bucket list race for me. Obviously, it didn't happen in 2020, and so they were calling this the comeback year. They have it somewhere on this shirt. And so I signed up this summer. I asked anyone in my running club if they wanted to run it with me, thinking no one would. I had a friend, Renee, who also signed up, and then this was going to be her first marathon. So she asked if I would coach her for that. So I did that as well. And she ran her first marathon and she just did amazing. So I'll definitely put that in another video at some point, but it was just incredible to be there with her. So before I get into a full recap, I will say that yes, this is definitely a course to PR on. If you're looking to qualify for Boston, this is absolutely one that you could do it on, especially because of that net downhill, but it's certainly not completely downhill. So when I was talking my pacing strategy video, there definitely are lots of rolling hills, which I'm going to get into more. But for whatever reason, it is just a fast field. Even just being on the plane and being there the day before, being at the expo, not that every runner looks the same or anything like that, but you're just saying to yourself, people seem fast here. And it's actually true. So after I finished the race, I went through and just to see kind of where I landed within my age group as far as percentage. So with my time of 3:33:32, that's what I ended up with. I was 135th out of 520 women in the 40 to 44 age group, which puts me at about the top 26%. That just goes to show that it's a really fast field because in other races, I'm usually closer to like maybe top 10%, something like that. So I was really just curious and looked at a couple other races. So I looked at Twin Cities in 2017, which really had similar weather to what we had this past weekend. And I've run it and it's also a net downhill. It just seems like a similar course to me. So I just looked at the times from that year, and with the time that I had, similarly, it would have been like top 4%. So just even though they're really touting it as this top Boston qualifier, you have to just consider other things as well, the type of people that they're bringing to the race. So I'm not really sure why it brings such a fast field, why those averages aren't similar to other courses, but it just is what it is. So just something I wanted to share and keep in mind. All right, so let's get into a quick recap of just getting into Sacramento and the day before. So we flew in 2 days before. We rented a car, which that was a huge cluster. However, it was really nice to have a car because my husband was going to drive around on the course. So we needed to do that. But just arriving 2 days before is absolutely necessary in my mind. It would have just been way stressful if that would have been the day before. So that just made the next day a really relaxed day. Got up, went for a shakeout run with my husband, with my friend who was running, as well as her husband. We just did about 2.5 miles. I always run the day before a marathon, a couple slow miles, and then we did some strides, and that was basically it. Showered, dressed, and then we went to the expo. The expo wasn't huge, but it was really honestly perfect for me. I don't love huge crowds. I didn't need to be like shopping a ton or visiting lots of vendors or anything like that. It was very well put together, very organized. The volunteers were awesome, getting you where you needed to go, getting you checked in. It was just all a really simple process. I took some pictures and mostly got on our way. And then for the rest of the day, the plan was to eat lots of carbs and just relax. And so that's what we did. I ate about 13 hours before the race start, which is what I always try to do. And that was pretty much it. I made sure I had my race kit ready to go. I had everything out that I needed and got to bed as kind of soon as I could, with knowing that I could fall asleep as well. Unfortunately, I woke up at 2:30 in the morning, so I was already had my alarm set, I think, for like 3:45 in the morning, but I was awake at 2:30 and didn't go back to sleep, and that's just really normal to not sleep that well the night before the race. I wasn't concerned about it or anything like that. I'd slept really well the night before that. So got ready. I actually took a shower, didn't wash my hair or anything, but just wanted the shower, the water on me to kind of wake me up. Got dressed, and then my friend Renee down in the lobby about 4:25, and we walked over to make sure that we were getting on the buses by 4:45. Everything was super organized there. There were some school buses, and then there were some charter buses. So I think because we got there early, we lucked out on getting on a charter bus, which was obviously much nicer. And then we just relaxed and rode up, and it was about, I want to say, 40-minute drive. I honestly don't even really remember. Obviously, you're driving 26 miles because it's point to point. And the really nice thing about this was you were able to stay on the buses once we got there. So we were there over an hour before the race start, which kind of seems like overkill, but it's nice to have that extra time, feel like you can go to the bathroom, get all your things together, go do a little bit of a warm-up run if you want to. All of that was really, really nice, but we were there very early. So the fact that we could stay on the buses and stay warm was huge. So thank you, CIM, for that. Went and got to the porta potty. Great. They had tons and tons of them. I just went farther down. So if you do run this, if it's you, just know, walk farther down. You will find some that are empty and you don't have to wait in line. Then I came back to the bus. We hung out, chatted, had a little bit more of my breakfast that I was having, which I just had an RX bar earlier in the morning, finished that on the bus, and then I had a banana. And that's really all I had up until the start, right before the start of the race. All right, so then we got off the bus about maybe 20 minutes before, something like that. I didn't leave a lot of time. Looking back, I was like, oh, I probably should have left a little more time to warm up a little more like I like to do. But we went to the bathroom one more time, got some trash thrown away, and then found the corral that we wanted to be in. So the way that the corrals were set up was very organized. You got to choose which one you wanted to be in. It wasn't specified earlier or anything like that. It was just based on your goal time. So I think ours was for the 3:30 to 3:45 group we got into. So our start time was going to be 7:05, and it started right on time. So everything was very organized there. As far as the weather that morning, it was cool. It was low 40s, I think. It was cloudy, and it ended up being cloudy the entire time, but it didn't feel overly cold standing there or anything. I did have a long sleeve shirt on similar to this. In fact, I wore exactly what I said I was going to wear in my clothing strategy video if you want to check that out. But the shirt that I had like this, I took off maybe 5 minutes before the race, tossed it aside. I was still wearing my ear warmer and gloves and kind of just decided, yeah, it's pretty chilly. I'm going to start with these. The plan was to see my husband at 6 miles. I just figured anything that I didn't want that I could just throw off to my husband when I saw him. All right, and then we were ready to start, waiting for them to tell us it was our turn to go. Just all the nerves, all the jitters, all the excitement, and we were ready to do this thing. I would say just in that moment, I'm like thinking this weather is absolutely perfect. It couldn't be better. Please just stay like this and don't rain. So then 7:05, they told us it was our start time, ready to go, or gun went off, or whatever they did. I honestly don't remember. Crossed the start line, and there was like a slight drizzle right in that first or second mile, but that is the only rain I really remember, and it was very slight. So just the weather remained the same after that, just cloudy the entire time and in those cool temperatures. So it was really, really good. All right, so talking about miles 1 through 6. So my pacing strategy that I talked about in the video was really what my plan was that day. It really didn't change for the most part. I did decide that instead of wanting to cross that half marathon point between the 1:48 and 1:49 mark, that seemed a little slower than I wanted to get that 3:35 goal. I still wanted a negative split, but maybe not by that much. So I decided that my goal was to come in somewhere a minute faster than that, between 1:47 and 1:48. So that wasn't going to change my first couple of miles though. I still wanted to hover right around 8:25, 8:20 for those. So I did come in at 8:25, I think, for my first mile, which ended up being the slowest mile of the entire race. Looking back now, I think I probably would have gone a little bit faster than that, maybe at 8:15. It was one of the most downhill parts of the entire race, I believe. But yeah, I mean, it's your first mile. You have so many more to go, and I'm just saying, just reel it in, just relax, don't weave around people, just chill. Renee and I were together at this time and basically split off after a mile. Moving into that second mile was more of the same. And I I felt good mostly, but my legs felt tight, and that made me a little bit nervous because my recent races, like a 10K, 15K I did, I felt amazing right from the get-go. Like my whole body, legs felt great. Whereas in this moment, I just felt my legs felt a little tight, not quite as fresh as I would have wanted them to be. I felt good overall, but you guys know how that goes, especially when you have a long way to go. You're just thinking, okay, don't go beyond what your body can handle. And having the plan to stay conservative was what the plan needed to stay for me as well. So basically kept more of the same mindset, miles 1 through 6. There were a lot of rolling hills, and so I really paid attention to effort. And whereas I could tell that other people were really trying to keep the same pace no matter what, I would go faster on the downhills, slow on the uphills, faster on the downhill, slow on the uphills. So it was like these people would keep passing me like on the uphill, and then I would pass them on the downhill just because they were keeping more of an even pace. So for anyone who is seeing this in the future who is going to run CIM, I would highly recommend to pay attention to your effort on all of those rollers because they are there throughout the first half of the race. And so there's no point in exerting extra energy by keeping on pace to go up the hill when really you can just make it up on the downhill. So remember that you're wanting to bank energy. It's a big deal for this particular race because of all of the hills that are happening in the first half. So a little ways on, this is what I'm thinking to myself. This is a lot hillier than I thought it would be. However, looking back now, it was like for every obviously hill up, there's a downhill. And in fact, for most miles, the downhill portion was just slightly longer than the uphill portion. So they would still be like a net downhill for each mile. Not all of them, but most of them. But at the time, you're kind of saying to yourself, there's quite a bit of hills. So just keep that in mind. They are there. And by the halfway point is when I just kind of started to say to myself, when are these hills going to be over? But we'll get back to that. So I saw my husband around mile 6, and just kudos to CIM for being super organized for their spectators. They had Google Maps online saying the best places for spectators to be to watch the racers, and it made it really easy for my husband to drive around and find us and know where to park and not have to be wondering, where there might be parking, things like that. So that was super helpful. At that point in time, it was starting to warm up. I threw him my gloves, I kept my ear warmer, and then I ended up keeping that on for the rest of the race. So what I was wearing after mile 6 is what I was wearing for the rest of the race. Now, through this time, I was doing what I said I was going to do in terms of hydration and nutrition. So if you watch that video, that is exactly what I did in terms of taking 3 gels total, having Tailwind, and then having a little bit of extra water for myself for when I was taking a gel, and then taking water at most of the aid stations. So at any of the aid stations where I did take water, I walked through them every time. I don't like running and drinking water at the same time. So that's what I did, and it worked out really, really well. There were a couple of water stations that I skipped the first one, and a couple towards the end as well. But otherwise, I got water at most of them. And all of the aid stations were on the right-hand side. So this is what I think kind of messed me up with getting to that 147, 148 mark at the halfway point, because I kept kind of forgetting that. And then I would be towards the middle and kept having to veer over to get the water. And then I would end up veering back to the middle. So every time I was getting water, I was doing this. And so every time I would get to a mile marker, my watch would beep quite a bit earlier. So I really think that's where I just wasn't running the tangents as well as I could have, or just keeping in mind that I'm adding on a little bit of mileage each time. So even though maybe my time was reflecting that I should have gotten to that 147 and 148 at half marathon, because I kept running over there, I wasn't quite at the half marathon mark when my watch said I should be, if that makes sense. So when I crossed at the half marathon point, I was at 148.40. So I was like, oh, I thought I was going to be, get there quicker than that. But I'm like, that's okay. This was what my plan was. I have plenty of time to make up this time and still get under that 3:35. And so that's where my mindset really was. And around that time, I think it was maybe mile 14, 15, someone yelled out the course gets easier from here on out, you know? And someone said, are you being serious? Because people, you guys know, spectators will yell these things like, you're almost there when you have 20 miles to go, that type of thing. The guy said, yes, I've run this several times. And he was absolutely right. So yes, once you hit that half marathon point, maybe 14-ish, it really is very flat and downhill for the rest of the race. Most of the rolling hills come in the first half. And so that's why it's so important that you are banking energy during that time. So when he said that, I'm thinking, oh, I hope he's right. And this is my time to negative split. So that was my plan. But I kept saying between 13 and 16 was just kind of stay steady, stay comfortable, make sure you're still feeling good, listen to your body. And at 16 is when I really wanted to start upping the pace. Right around that time, getting up to the 16-mile mark, I met someone on the course, Todd. It was so great to meet you and chat with you. But it was just really funny because he recognized me from the channel and asked if my name was Jane and that my channel was running with Jane. And so that was just really cool. And I've never experienced anything like that, and honestly just kind of weird, but in a good way. And so talked to him for a while, and that was just nice to chat with someone and take my mind off, you know, the running for a little bit. And then after that, I got to once it was mile 16, I'm like, it's go time. This is it. Dial in, focus. And I just really changed my thinking at that point, knowing that this was the time to start getting the miles faster and making up the time. So mile 16 would end up being my slowest mile of the rest of the miles. I didn't negative split all of them from there on out, but just kind of overall. I started getting faster, so hovering around the low 8s for those next couple of miles. And then after 19 miles is when I got everything under an 8-minute mile pace, which looking back, and at the time, I just was like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I feel this good to be able to get this pace. And my legs never really did feel completely fresh. In fact, I did end up taking a couple salt tablets on the course because I was worried that they were cramping, because of not having enough electrolytes, which I'm not sure that's really why it was, because it wasn't like it was a warm day, but it was more of a situation where, you know what, can't hurt, get some extra electrolytes. And I just was nervous that all of a sudden this cramping would happen. And you see people on the course late in marathons, they literally can barely walk because they're so cramped up. And I just did not want that to happen to me. But the miles just kept ticking by. They kept feeling good. I really was just like, I can't believe I'm seeing these paces on my watch. I'm running then, in the low 750s. And I'm like, just let's keep this going. But I have to say the spectators that last 10K were just amazing. I mean, I feel like they just carried me.
Keep it up. You're getting stronger.
I was cheering people on around me, saying, let's go to other runners, saying, you got this, really trying to cheer them on, shouting back at spectators when they were cheering. There was this one woman like up on a flat roof, saying, yeah, and I was yelling up back at her. That was one of my favorite moments. But the spectators were just awesome. I was like tingly all over that last 10K, and it just felt like there was adrenaline there, and it was just really, really exciting. Then I saw the 3:35 pacer around the 24-mile mark, I think. And at this time, I really was not looking at my overall time or pace at all. I was looking to see at each mile what my lap pace was, but I wasn't paying a lot of attention to my watch. I was really just trying to go as hard as I could. So I wasn't sure if I was on track for 3:35 at that time. I knew that I was working towards that, but I wasn't sure exactly where I was. So when I saw the 3:35 pacer, which I know these pacers do an awesome job, and they're some of the best, and they have so many, by the way, if you do want to run with a pacer, you'll definitely find one at the pace that you want to go at. But that is when I just got like this extra push, like, let's go, let's do this. I'm going to catch that 3:35 pacer. And so I did, caught the 3:35 pacer, just pushed right on past them and just kept going. And then those last 3 miles were in the 740s range, and just wanted to come in as hard as I possibly could. I really didn't have anything left beyond 740s to give that last mile. And then I did look at my watch at right at 26 miles. And that's when I saw that I was going to be able to PR. So I'm just like, do this. You will not be happy if you don't PR this at this point. You can do this. So I came in at 3:33:32, which was a 20-second PR. Just so thrilled, so happy. I saw my friend Renee, who I had coached throughout this thing. We've been running together this last year and formed this awesome friendship. This was her first marathon. Ran up to her, hugged her, asked her what she got. She told me she got 3:26 something, and I was just blown away. But it was just one of the happiest moments ever. I can't even explain it. It was so great. And then we were trying to find our husbands at that point.
A PR for this mama.
Under such perfect conditions.
Yay!
And then, of course, we're freezing within a few minutes. They did give us these really cool like jackets, better than like a space blanket, I think. But that was really nice. Got a little food, and then we were looking for the BQ bell because we both qualified for Boston, and the line was insanely long. So I just decided I didn't want to wait for that. I was really ready after a few pictures, you know, just taking the excitement for a little bit. But after that, I was really ready to just get back to the hotel, which we stayed at the Holiday Inn. Not the most amazing hotel, but it was a really, really good location. So I would recommend that. And walk back. She ended up walking back later after getting dressed when the line was much shorter to do the BQ bell, which absolutely she should have done as her first BQ for sure. So that was really cool. And really, it was an amazing day out there. It seemed like most people had really, really good performances. Just, I think the weather could not have been better. Just a really great course, and like I said, the crowd support was amazing, and I'm sure it being the comeback year, people were extra excited to be out there cheering on runners. I think I read somewhere that there were like 4,000 volunteers, so thank you to all of you who volunteered. It's so appreciated always. So overall, as far as do I recommend this course, 100% I recommend it to anyone, no matter what your time is in the marathon or what time you're going for or your level. It would be a great marathon for everyone. Why it attracts this faster crowd, I'm not really sure, but it is really just an awesome course for anyone. Highly recommend it. Just keep in mind that the elevation is more than they make it out to seem on the website. What's kind of interesting is my Garmin said it was around 300 something feet of gain, whereas Strava said 600 something feet of gain. So that's a very big difference. I tried to look up why that was, and there is a little bit of an explanation in Strava, which is still a little bit confusing to me. So I'm not sure exactly how much gain there is. It's not something you have to know perfectly, just knowing that yes, you will have to tackle hills in the first half for sure, and after that it's pretty flat downhill and fast. It's probably my most favorite course I've run. Twin Cities was also awesome. I'm used to running marathons that are very small, like the one I ran this summer. I was alone most of the time, so just having that crowd support at the end, it definitely pushes you to go harder and be able to push your body to do things that you didn't realize that it could do. Then looking back, of course, after, you know, I'm super thrilled. I think it's human nature to go back and be like, what could I have done differently to go a little bit faster? But really my overall goal was to negative split the race, have a lot of energy at that 20-mile mark to be able to do big things and kind of light it up that last 10K, and that's what I did. The last thing I wanted was to get to that last 10K and just feel like junk. That is not what I wanted at all. I wanted it to be a great day out there, and I executed that. So there's really nothing more that I could ask for. So if you guys have any questions about the race, please drop them below. I would be happy to answer anything. Thank you guys so much for your support. On the icing on the cake that day was getting to 1,000 subscribers. So if you are someone who is subbed to my channel, just from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I appreciate all of you so much. I love being able to be part of this running community, and I am very humbled. So I hope you guys have an awesome day, awesome week of running, and I'll catch you in the next video.